Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, when you get to dig into the vault, you get to find some truly, truly special stuff. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and a conversational fashion. And you know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do because, let's face it, you're listening. Keep listening, but subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Give us the old 5-star rating. Hit the like button, basically wherever you get your podcasts. We're over at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, pretty much all platforms. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and we're on Instagram at, well, where else? We're at In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because if we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, well, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please pay us a visit. On this episode, boy oh boy, we got a fun one. We are diving into some epic CanCon, going into the vault to talk Skip Tracer, which is still available now on demand and on the Hollywood Suite channels. And if you know, it's available on Blu-ray from Gold Ninja Video, which I know you can pick up at, well, places like Bay Street Video here in Toronto, who support this fabulous podcast of ours as well. But what this movie is, it is the story of John Collins, played by David Petersen, who is the best skip tracer in the business. If you miss a payment, he'll take your car. Beg for more time, and he'll empty your house. In fact, Collins is so good at this, he's already on his way to clinching his debt collections agency Man of the Year award for the 4th year in a row. Only there's one more account he's going to need to close. It's his Moby Dick. It's his white whale. And he'll do anything to wrap it up. And by that, we mean anything. And this was the debut feature from writer-director Zale Dalen, who gives us this gritty character study of the hollowness of success and what a man will do to prove himself. And it's shot in the streets of Vancouver in the 1970s. It is a fantastic little piece of Canadiana, which kind of got forgotten, but has been resurrected by our friends over at Golden Video, but also getting to have a run over on Hollywood Suite. If you haven't signed up now for Hollywood Suite, I do definitely recommend it. It is one of the better channels out there. You can do that through either your cable provider, or you can sign up for the channel via Prime Video on the stack channels, I do believe. But yeah, there's multiple ways that you can see all the good stuff on Hollywood Suite, as well, among which Skip Tracer is one of them. But we had the unique pleasure of sitting down and talking with writer-director Zale Dalen about the origin of the story, his career, just sort of the challenges therein of getting it made, why it kind of fell under the radar, and so very much more, and why this film still holds up today. But like I said, Skip Tracer is available either on Blu-ray from Golden Video, and you can find that online, but also at Bay Street Video, and it's also on Hollywood Suite, available on demand now, and I do recommend you go check that out. But first, enjoy our talk with Zale, because between you and me, it's a pretty good one.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you, sir. Well, I mean, just first off, just thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate this.
Oh, it's no problem at all. I'm now sort of retired. I guess I'm retired unless the phone ever rings, but I don't think that's going to happen. So, so here I am. You know, I've got lots of time on my hands.
Well, full disclosure, I'm a fan. I even have the Blu-ray. So.
Oh, wonderful! Thank you. Yeah, I'm delighted with the way that worked out. Particularly delighted that they did me the courtesy of sticking passion on the end of it. That's one film that I've had zero ability to get out to anybody, but I got the most wonderful response from one of the people that bought the Blu-ray. They said that they had a lot of fun with Skip Tracer, but they adored Passion. So I know there's an audience for that film, but damned if I can get to it.
But I mean, I guess that kind of leads into my first question because I mean, to me, like in watching this film, like I was stunned just because again, I mean, as a film viewer, as a film goer, I didn't necessarily have any sort of concept of what independent cinema meant in the 70s in Canada. And I mean, this was a proper action movie. And I mean, this was a hell of a lot of fun. Like, I guess my first question for you is like, walk me through sort of the origin of this on your end. Why did you want to make this film?
Well, I had very commercial reasons for wanting to make it. I was fascinated by the fact that cop shows on TV were so popular, and I was trying to figure out why. And it occurred to me that they're easy to write. You know, you've always got a criminal and you've always got a cop, and a million variations on both. You can create a cop character like Columbo or somebody who's got some character to him, and you can have a million motives for the crime and methods for the crime. And so you've got a built-in conflict. You didn't have to search for what Hitchcock would have called the MacGuffin of the
Right.
picture. And so I was looking around for something that might have a similar MacGuffin that wasn't the cop show, and I hit upon the idea of the debt collector. So now the Skip Tracer originally started out as kind of a very B movie concept. It was going to be the master Skip Tracer and the Skip that everybody knew or thought existed, but they weren't really sure because they'd never been able to catch him. So he was kind of a legend, and the Skip Tracer wanted to cap his career by catching this guy, and so it was going to be just basically a very very standard detective cop movie turned into a business world movie. The more I wrote, I think I wrote about 50 pages of that. And the more I wrote, it became derivative Hollywood crap and television. And I just was in despair because it just wasn't doing anything that I wanted to do. So I ended up doing some research, and I ended up talking to a lot of people who were in that business, who had either been skip tracers or were skip tracers or were in the financial business. And I talked to one fellow who worked for a loan company, and he told me that the structure was that the loan company didn't pay its employees enough to have a real solid living. They weren't going to make any money just as an employee. A lot of them were on salaries with a bonus, and the bonus was calculated from the number of loans they handed out with minus the number of loans that went delinquent. And there was all kinds of motivational stuff involved, like the Man of the Year award that would give the Skip Tracer his own office and status in the company, and so that became the basis for the structure there. That Collins his task is to hand out loans, and if they're risky, he's motivated to hand them out anyway, and then make sure that he collects on them. So it became a kind of a study of business manipulation of the employees, the middle management, like his boss, and also the public to try to get people okay with the idea that they would go to a loan company for a loan and put their house up. And those loans were set up so that if you missed one payment, the loan company owns your house.
Mm.
So it was pretty vicious. And so that was the basis for the structure of the thing. And then I thought, well, would I be comfortable in that role? And the answer was no, I wouldn't be, because you're going to be handing out loans that are risky to people who could get a better rate someplace else, and talking them into it, and then beating them over the head and make sure they pay it back, and highly, highly competitive. So that's where it all came from. And from then on, the script kind of wrote itself.
Well, and I mean, I love that this guy has a conscience as well. I mean, especially trying to talk somebody out of taking the loan as well. Was that important for you to sort of give this a little bit of humanity as well?
Well, he was the most unlikable character in so many ways. I mean, I had to give him something that would make the audience want him to want him to want to follow him because otherwise he's just a thug, you know. And which Gabrowski, the heavy set mafia-looking type, was. I mean, he's just basically a straight thug, doesn't care, just just more collateral damage, kid. So I had to give the Skip Tracer something. Now I cut some scenes out of it that just it didn't work for me. I had one scene where one woman was paying off her loan by sleeping with him, and that just didn't work. It was it didn't work for her or him or anybody. It just made him into a real creep. So that scene went out. But it was not an easy movie to make, given the budget and I wanted to do it locally. I wanted to use all local cast, and I mean that was one way to keep the budget down. And I was very, very budget conscious all through it. So there were scenes in there where, well, for instance, where where Brent comes to the door and wants to talk to him, and he never opens the door, which meant I could play the scene with only one character on call. So there was a lot of fudging on to make the budget work.
Oh, for
And,
sure. Well, it's indie cinema. No, absolutely. But I mean, I'm curious because correct me if I'm wrong, you did manage to play and have the film debut at the New York Film Festival. Like for you when you were making it, was the festival circuit and then getting it sold sort of always sort of the drive to make it? Because I mean, I'm just trying to get a sense of, I guess, what the theatrical state was for independent films, especially up here in Canada at that time.
oh, it was impossible, absolutely impossible. Uh, so bad that Phil Fraser, the producer of my next film, The Hounds of Notre Dame, gave up filmmaking completely when he got a lesson from the distributors on what it takes to get a film into the theaters. You're lucky to get a theater date. You play 1 week, and unless the returns are incredible, unless there's lineups around the block, your picture's gone, and they're bringing in the next Hollywood film. So it's the festival circuit was just about the only possible way in, and I kind of knew that television sales would be our only way to get the budget back, because going theatrical just might do you some good in terms of promoting the picture, getting reviews and things, but it certainly wasn't going to help to get any money back. You're not going to get any money out of the theaters. Impossible. So and having the telefilm, and in those days it was the Canadian Film Development Corporation. Having them behind us gave it a legitimacy that got it into festivals, and festivals became the lifeline for it. I mean, it went from it started in Montreal at the Montreal Film Festival, then Toronto at the Toronto Film Festival, then New York, then London, Thessalonica in Greece, Sydney, Australia. It just kind of marched around the world, and became pretty well known as kind of an artistic, art movie rather than just a straight B movie thriller.
Now, I mean, I guess that kind of dovetails into my next question because I mean, I'd love to hear the story about how you connected with Justin Decloux to sort of get the film, get a fresh transfer in there and to sort of get it released onto Blu-ray. And I mean, and now obviously available streaming on Hollywood Suite. But like, I'm curious, was this in a telefilm vault, or like was this in were the negatives in your basement?
This was a forgotten film as far as I was concerned. I mean, it's what 43 years old. When was 1967? I mean, it was like, about 43 years ago that I made it, and I totally expected that film to be completely forgotten, like all the other ones were that were made at that time. I mean, there were a lot of films made that Telefilm put money into, especially the low budget category, the special investment category they called it, and I was at the time I managed to maneuver my way into being the West Coast advisor to the Canadian Film Development Corporation, and I'd go to every meeting and beg them to expand the zero budget, the low budget category, the special investment category. But I was up against guys that were only interested in Hollywood style big picture movie. You can't steal $1 million from $1 million picture, as they said. So, so I'd be I'd be, fighting with people and say, oh, you can't make a decent movie for that kind of money. And yet, those were the decent movies that were being made, And to try to bust into Hollywood style picture making meant that we got a lot of pictures that were imitating Hollywood movies without the promotions budget, without the star budget, without all of the thing. I mean, the machine that we were up against, it was like trying to make a sports car in your backyard and then expecting to go into mass production. You couldn't do it. And so I saw the special investment category as the only way to make Canadian films. And every time they tried to make a Canadian film that wasn't in that category, the immediate thing was who's the star, and so they'd be shopping for the has-been stars out of Hollywood,
Right.
and then who's the producer, and you'd end up with the money sharks that really didn't understand film at all. And so you'd end up with a derivative Hollywood picture that didn't have the promotions budget, couldn't get into theaters, and lost a ton of money. In fact, our investors from Skip Tracer, I was once told, were the only investors in any telefilm, in any Canadian film corporation movie that got any money back. On
Oh, wow.
anyone did. Yeah, it was incredible. And we got the entire budget back with our first television sale to Germany. And that let me pay off my investors. And, and from there on, the film had paid for itself and nobody cared whether it got any money. So,
So I guess that leads into the question: when you got the call from Justin, like, where were the materials for this sort of sitting? Were they in a vault somewhere, or was it just literally you had them?
I did not have them. I had no idea where they. Well, I did know where they were. The archives, Canadian archives, had requested a virgin print years before. I mean, shortly after we finished the film, and they had archived it and put it in their vault, and then they had digitized it at somebody's request, and so they had the new digital version that they could hand to Justin. So that I had very little to do with any of this, and it's all a huge surprise to me and a great pleasure. I mean, you can't imagine how validating it is to have this movie come back from the dead.
Well, and I mean, it feels like we're having a lot of movies like made in that time period from Canada get resurrected by a lot of these North American Blu-ray labels that are finding content and doing restorations. But I mean, I'm kind of curious. I mean, this feels like sort of a uniquely Canadian thing, like, because I mean, we were making independent cinema at the same time as the Americans, but that stuff gets lauded as some of the best of all time, and our stuff gets forgotten, and we're just sort of behind the curve a little bit. I mean, I'm curious from your perspective, why did the independent cinema from that time period get, I guess, ignored might be the right word?
Well, it got ignored because we didn't have the machinery to get it out there. You have to understand how the American cinema works. So the first time I went down to Hollywood, I went to a restaurant and there'd be, 5 different tables where somebody's reading a script. And each one of those script has a possibility of getting made. Somebody's got money in it, somebody's trying to market it. And if they do decide to make it, they've got a whole publicity department ready to fire up posters and pay off, news people and get it out there with hype. I mean, the Toronto Film Festival had an interest in Canadian films, but that didn't really last. What they are now is a branch of American film marketing.
Right.
So the things that they show are the latest Tom Hanks film that the majors don't know what to do with. So they start with the Canadian the Toronto Film Festival, and get all kinds of exposure and hype. Now with Passion, I got to talk about Passion for a
Oh,
minute.
please. Yeah.
That was my major failing as a business plan. I had this insane theory that I'd been to every Toronto Film Festival for the previous 20 or 30 years, and I thought, and I'd looked at digital filmmaking, and I'd had a fairly major royalty payoff from my television work. So I thought, well, I'm too young to retire, and this isn't enough to really retire on anyway. And I'm going to take a look at digital media. So I made one little digital film about a fellow I knew who was getting a kidney transplant. And I looked at the technology and I said, wow, this stuff looks great. I mean, you could actually make something that looks like a movie with this. But everything that was being made had the camera on the head of a trained seal, you know.
Right, right.
And the soundtrack was, you couldn't hear the dialogue because they weren't paying attention to sound. And so they were always making an excuse for the technology, saying, you know, this is footage found in the woods that a college student was making a documentary with, and, you know, the Blair Witch Project kind of
Right.
thing. Or else it was, you know, interviews in a psychiatrist's office or security camera footage or something where they could ignore the technical quality of the medium. But I looked at the medium and said, wow, this stuff could actually look like a movie if somebody paid attention to how it was shot. So I bought a Cobra crane and three GL1 Canon cameras, and I had all my own sound equipment already, and I made a totally cooperative film using local actors, and we set out to make Passion. And it was the most fun I've had in the film business because, quite frankly, I hate the film business. You can't get a worse case of micromanagement than you get in film. You know, there's a script that has to go through, you know, how many people have to approve the script before it gets made. And so any vision that the director has, you know, it gets wallowed around by all of the brass and the suits. And then once the script is finalized, they bring in a production manager to set up a budget. And the budget is trying to have the fewest shooting days and, you know, the most setups per day that they can possibly get. And the end result is, unless you're on the A list, you can't afford to make any mistakes. Everything's got to be nailed down, and it's run like it was, you know who Frank Taylor was?
Yes.
Yeah, the inventor of time management,
Yeah.
marketing, time motion studies, and unless unless it was micromanaged to that extent, you couldn't make mistakes, and you had to hope that you got everything right. And so it was just not fun. There was no art left. I'm amazed at what's coming out today, like movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once. Just blow my mind. How could they make something like that? You know, and also films like Parasite. You know, that are so full of intellect and art and beautiful stuff, but they're not being made by the majors. You know, the majors are making you know, another Marvel comic
For sure, yeah.
franchise picture. Anyway, so that was the business environment that we were walking into, and I was walking in with passion. I thought, well, I'll make this film. It'll blow their minds what you can do with digital, and I'll get invited to the film festival and immediately get a television sale, which will pay back the money I put in. The deal I had with everybody involved was you put up the sweat equity, and I'll put up the cash, and we'll make a film, and then we'll keep track of everybody's hours, and we'll split it all up when I get the money back. Didn't
Money
get
never came
invited,
back.
didn't get invited to a single film festival, and everybody hated the film. And, and I can see why. I mean, I understand completely why people wouldn't like the film. It violates all the rom-com tropes. You know, it's about a stalker. You know,
Yeah.
it's about a middle-aged man who's you know, in love with his younger business partner while his wife is in a palliative care home dying. I mean, not exactly your most attractive character. You know, I was interested in the concept of passion. You know, people fall in love and they really have a hard time controlling themselves. And stalkers, you know, you would think you could say to a stalker, look, there's lots of women in the world. She doesn't want you. It's not the right circumstances. Go find somebody else. But it doesn't work that way, you know. So anyway, we made Passion, and I'm really proud of it. It looks like a movie, but I don't think they even looked at it when I submitted it to film festivals. Now, my friend John Conchenton was making So You Want to Fight videos, so he had all the gear, and he lent the gear to his son, who made a 5-minute film of French kissing the family dog, and was immediately invited to 5 different film festivals because they're going to give them 5 minutes, excuse me, 5 minutes of screen time, and there's no downside for the film festival. They'll have a boisterous teenage audience hooting and
For
yelling.
sure, yeah.
And but when I show them my film, it looks like a movie, and it's up against the latest thing from, like I said, the latest Tom Hanks picture. And there's no publicity budget. Telefilm is not behind it. Nobody's behind it but me. And I'm pretty sure that they had it running in their office while they watched it, and were taking calls and sort of paying attention to it, but not really giving it any cutting it any slack. And it didn't get invited to any film festivals, and that was the end of marketing it. So I said, well, hell, I got to do something. So I rented the Pacific Cinematheque in Vancouver, and I got a private screening together, and I hired a publicist to get some opinion makers there, and I handed out free tickets to the film workshops at the various schools, and we had a wonderful full house audience who laughed all the way through the picture and had a great time. Not one opinion maker showed up. My publicist didn't show up, and I might as well have torn up $1,000 bill at the corner of Thurlow and Robson as for all the good I did for my picture, you know. Um,
Yikes.
and then I went really crazy and I tried to make the next one. I had the script all ready. I tried to make a film about tree planters. And that was an insane move. I mean, it had to be, it couldn't be done on digital with a minimal crew. It needed to be widescreen, 35 millimeter with a good technical crew making storm sequences. And
For sure.
anyway, we shot about a third of the picture, and that getting people together in a makeshift camp in the woods to work on it when they're not getting paid, was difficult.
Yeah.
And then we shot about a third of the picture, and every scene, I loved every scene. It had something good in it, but also something that wasn't good. And when I sat down to edit it together, I just realized I didn't have the movie. And the plan was we'd go back the next summer and shoot the remaining scenes and put it all together and get our movie to made. Somebody stole the generator out of the major prop, the school bus that I'd bought. Somebody smashed the window of a Volkswagen van that was left in the woods, which was also a major prop. And I realized it didn't matter because I didn't have the money to put gas in the generator anyway. So I was done. Ended up going bankrupt and running away to China for 9 years.
Now, I mean, I guess the question is because, I mean, just in talking to you, it feels like you started making movies like 10, 15 years too early. Like, for you, like, is there a way to describe sort of the level of validation you must be feeling with Skip Tracer now available to stream, sort of for a lot more people to see than probably you could have ever imagined?
It's really my own fault that I didn't have a bigger career than I had. And my career in television was pretty good, but the problem is to make a feature film that's independent, you can spend years developing the script, and then your chances of getting it off the ground are very small, unless you're really, you're really an astute business person and don't offend anybody and don't get
Yeah.
telephone mad at you, which I'd done. But my major problem was I'm a political idiot, and I uh, I wanted to make films with no stars because I wanted the story in the film to be the star.
For sure.
And it took me years to get over that. I'd be working on some television show downtown Toronto, and someone would come up and say, "What you doing?" And I'd say, "Well, we're making a movie." And they'd say, "Well, who's in it?" That was their first question: "Who's in it?" And I realized that that's the most important marketing question for a picture. And also, I had no sense of where the power is. I was totally willing to insult the people. I was almost as bad as Phil. Phil, come on, what was his name? Phil. This is an old. He made Gray Fox.
Oh,
Phil.
okay. I know who you mean.
Phil
Yeah.
Borsos. Phil Borsos. I mean, Phil Borsos working as a hired movie director, as a journeyman director on a Hollywood film in Florida, uh, pissing off the Jewish, and I don't mean to sound racist here, but pissing off the Jewish producer by not going along with his suggestions and being insulting to him while he's trying to figure out how to make One Magic Christmas. I mean, Phil put his career in the toilet uh, immediately. And then he topped it off by pissing off everybody at Disney when he made One Magic Christmas. And I think that was really the end of him. And then he stepped out of the world with leukemia. But Phil was a great guy, and he always had his eye on making it big and doing it big. He was the first guy to bring a Steadicam to Vancouver to make a film about a guy climbing a tree and cutting the top off. And I said, oh, "You're nuts! You're going to shoot anamorphic 35 with a Steadicam in Vancouver about a guy climbing up a tree and cutting the top off. how are you going to make any money with that? Well, Phil didn't really care. He wanted to make something that impressed people, and boy, he really did. Spar Tree is an incredible short film that got played as a short in movie theaters, and got him to the attention of Hollywood. And they said, yeah, this guy could be a big movie maker. Anyway, there's a lot to talk about that era, but my major problem was that I was insensitive to where the power is, insensitive to where the money comes from, and I really wanted to make independent Canadian films that told our stories without compromise. So it's kind of ironic that I started with a derivative Hollywood concept, basically a cop movie dressed up as a Canadian picture. There's a lot of irony here in my life, and it's
Oh,
great.
but you know what? To me, this is still very much a Canadian picture, and I mean, I'm glad it's out there for the universe now because I mean, I had always heard about it for years, and then eventually when I got to catch up and finally see it, I absolutely loved it. And I mean, and I love that it's playing on Hollywood Suite now, and I'm happy for you. And again, just thank you for the time today. I really appreciate it.
Well, and it still has potential. I mean, Phil, no, not Phil, Sabbath, Justin Sabbath, Phil Sabbath's son, um, in Vancouver has a film production company and wants to remake Skip Tracer. So that's going to be exciting.
Love it. Oh, that's fantastic. No, for sure. Can't wait
Yeah,
to see that.
and yeah, so I don't know where it all is going to end, but it is totally validating, and
It's a hell of a ride for sure.
it's been a hell of a life, I'll tell you, especially and to end up with 9 years in China.
Well, Zale, thank you again for the time, and again, congrats, and just again, thank you for the time. This was a lot of fun.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I'm glad you like Skip Tracer, and do what you can to get Passion some attention because it deserves it. It's
Absolutely, for sure.
a historically important film, even if people hated it. It's important because, as far as I know, it's the very first film that was made on digital that didn't try to pretend that it was anything other than a movie. And
Okay. All right.
so yeah, and I'm really proud of it. And there's things I would change. I'd certainly give it a different ending. I really have a vision in my mind of the star on his sailboat someplace in the ocean with huge waves railing at his fate and you know, but that wouldn't make it more commercial. That's for sure.
Yeah, but you can still sell it to Netflix. It doesn't matter anymore. But again, Zale, again, thank you for the time, man. This has been fun.
I should let you go. Thank you very much. You have a great day.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.